Hello, everyone. It's Jabari Young here for your Express News post-game wrap alongside our columnist Mike Finger. Spurs knew their opening first-round series against the Golden State Warriors was not going to be easy, and it sure didn't look that way either. Greg Popovich saying his team looked like a deer in the headlights as the Spurs fall to the Golden State Warriors 113-92 to open their first-round series. Hello, everyone. It's Jabari Young here for your Express News post-game wrap alongside our columnist Mike Finger. Mike, and as I said before, Greg Popovich kind of getting into his team said, I thought we came into this game mentally prepared. I thought we were physically ready, and we didn't. We didn't come in mentally prepared. We looked like a deer in the headlights, like they didn't know what was going on. Your take from this Game 1 loss and the Spurs finding themselves in an 0-1 hole?
I think Pop has to believe that. I think he has to believe, just like the players, that something is under their control. And that rather than saying, our team lost because it's just not good enough to beat the Warriors, you have to think, we need to be more into the game. We can't be deer in headlights. We got to make adjustments. This team is so much... the Warriors are so much better than the Spurs, it's not even funny. And maybe there were some matchups in the playoffs that would have been better for the Spurs, but this is just a bad matchup up and down. I mean, when you end up with Kevin Durant on Patty Mills multiple times in the first quarter, there's just what can you do with that? Yeah. And there's just no place to hide a lot of these mismatches, and I think it's going to be just a rough series for the Spurs to get back into this.
It was funny, Manu Ginobili, after the game said, we got caught in a perfect storm. The Warriors came out, they were hitting shots, their defense was phenomenal. Andre Iguodala added to the start lineup, kind of added to their length and athleticism. They were switching, and when they found themselves, mismatched, the Spurs did. The Warriors will switch right back out. They were rotating really well, and then they were going and scoring. Meanwhile, the Spurs couldn't score. They weren't playing any defense, or the defense wasn't to their capability, and they found themselves in a perfect storm. There's no reason to think that Game 2 will not be a perfect storm. I mean, even if it's a thunderstorm, can the Spurs overcome it?
Right. Well, I think the hope that the Spurs had heading into this series is that maybe the Warriors won't be able to flip that switch. They'd lost 10 of their last 17 games in the regular season. They were playing without Steph Curry. You thought maybe this lethargy is going to linger into the postseason for the Warriors. It did not. So once the Warriors prove that they can flip that switch, now things get really difficult for the Spurs. And so Manu's right when he said it's the perfect storm, because the Warriors were up for this game. And you hoped as a Spurs fan that maybe they could come in and steal the first one. Now that opportunity is gone. Is the series over? Of course not. I mean, you think back to last year against the Rockets. The Spurs suffered their worst playoff loss under Pop ever and came back and won the series. So there are grains of hope to grab onto, but it's going to be tough.
Steve Kerr saying one of the reasons he inserted, Andre Iguodala was that to get their defense back to where it needs to be. Andre Iguodala, obviously one of the better perimeter defenders. They needed to set a tone. Warriors came out, set that tone early, punched the Spurs in the mouth. Spurs brought it to within 6, but then the Warriors went on that in the second quarter, that 16-6 run that ended, and they kind of just didn't let up after that. But moving ahead to Game 2 now, Spurs, this is a series, and obviously we know adjustments need to be made. One adjustment I think has to be made is tinkering with that starting lineup. I fully expect the Spurs to consider and maybe even pull the trigger on bringing Rudy Gay into the starting lineup and maybe having to, either bring Kyle Anderson off the bench or Patty Mills, one of those two, because you need a guy in there that the Warriors are really going to respect, that they're really going to sit back and say, okay, you know what? We can't just blitz LaMarcus Aldridge, what they were doing all game. We got to respect Rudy Gay. He had a team high in Game 1 today. Any adjustments, if there are any adjustments on your mind that you think that the Spurs may be able to do it to maybe even this thing up?
No, I think that's legitimate, and Greg Popovich kind of reiterated that in post-game when he said we have a couple players that they don't guard. Yeah. And that's a problem when you're not guarding DeJounte Murray, you're not really guarding Kyle Anderson, then you can put all that defense on LaMarcus and guys like that. So I think you're right in that having a Rudy Gay out there to start the game will help. Is it going to turn the series around? I'm skeptical about that. But little things like that, I think you also have to, as you mentioned during the game, maybe if Patty Mills is going to be out there, have him on Andre Iguodala instead of Klay Thompson. Maybe that could help a little bit. But again, this is kind of lipstick on a pig. It's going to be tough to erase this gap in mismatches altogether.
Spurs know that they're not the favorites. Manu Ginobili saying that again, but they said in order for us to win this series, we have to overachieve. They got to overachieve right now in Game 2 on Monday night so they can avoid going into an 0-2 hole before they get back on their home court. For Mike Finger, I'm Jabari Young. Maybe catch all your Spurs news and notes throughout the postseason. Got you covered here in Oakland. And when we get back to San Antonio, expressnews.com.